Let's Address Illinois. And today I have the honor of being in the room virtually with County Board candidate Kasey Holt. Kasey is the Macon County Board candidate for District 5. So Kasey, thanks for being here today. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing really good. Had a
Um,
busy summer so far.
Kasey is running against a Republican in a rural area. And so I think it's really important that we highlight people like Kasey who are running with progressive platforms and highlighting that you can beat a Republican with that. You don't have to be a dirty centrist moderate Democrat. Um, but yeah, no, have you done anything to enjoy your summer thus far?
I have definitely tried to get out with my kids. I have 4 wonderful kids, so
Mm.
we spent a lot of time outside, jumping on the trampoline, swimming, all the things. Shout out to Scoville Zoo here in town in Macon County. They have a free day every week.
Uh-uh.
So we try to make it over there, just all that fun stuff.
Oh, amazing. Have you watched any of the World Cup yet? I know I'm wearing a Mexico jersey because they won yesterday, but
We have been watching kind of when we can fit it in our schedule. It's been a little crazy. We definitely were watching. We had some severe storms earlier this week, so we're kind of hunkered down in the basement. While we're here, I guess we'll watch some soccer, get in on that. So that's been fun.
that was wild. My dogs were not happy with the storm.
Same.
Not at all. Um, but we can get down to business. So as you know, I ran against Nikki Budzinski as a Democrat, primarying a Democrat to the left of her. You were an amazing volunteer and a help during the campaign, and now you're in your own race, taking on a Republican who's been in the seat for a very long time. You said back since you were in high school. Tell me a little bit more about Greg.
So Greg has been, like you said, occupying the seat since before I graduated high school. He's been occupying the seat since 2012. He originally was like a defense attorney, worked for, like the public defender's office for a long time and, appreciate and respect that work.
Mm.
He has been known to identify himself as socially liberal and fiscally conservative, which is a choice. Um, I would take some qualms with that considering his attendance record.
Mhm.
I would say it's hard to argue fiscal conservativeness when you're, taking a small stipend for your time on the county board, and not bothering to show up to, like, half the meetings. So, I would argue a little bit against that stance he claims to have, but um, that's kind of his history and what he's been doing pretty consistently. His poor attendance record is not new. It is
Mhm.
long-term problem, unfortunately.
And Macon County, that's mostly Decatur, right? Is there any other cities in there? Just kind of the outlying suburb.
So yeah, there's some small cities in there. Like Forsyth is in our district. Mount Zion is sorry,
Mhm.
in Macon County, not necessarily in my district. In my district in particular, there is like Warrensburg, Niantic, um, Decatur as well. Like all of those more smaller towns on the rural side of Macon County, kind of towards the Springfield area. That is my district in particular.
And one thing that I think it's important to highlight, I noticed this during the campaign, but people in Decatur are still hungry for change and progressive policies. They might they're a little bit, I think, lean blue across the board in Macon County, but there's a lot of red there. But that doesn't mean that they want Democrats who throw trans people under the bus, right? Like they just want more money in their pocket.
Yeah, people here are really struggling. One of the things that like we've seen over and over again is like things like our property taxes rising, but not any of the
Mhm.
like benefits you're supposed to be getting for property taxes.
Yeah.
And I'm the first one to support my local public school. I definitely want them to have the resources they need. And I have no problem helping with that. But also, at the same time, I still have to pay the rest of my bills. So I think there needs to be some balance there and making sure we're taking care of our residents. The residents of Macon County actually, I think it's about 18% of our county is below the poverty line.
Wow.
So that's higher than the national average and higher than the Illinois average. So to see like our property taxes climbing so significantly is definitely alarming and concerning for a community that carries a significant burden of poverty.
No, I think unfortunately, I've been to Springfield a lot, I've been to Decatur, and you hear a lot of the same thing, even in the Chicagoland area, that a lot of people are anti-Pritzker because of the property taxes. It's a huge issue, and I think it's something that, like, we as a whole, as a state, we have to tax billionaires, trillionaires too now, and just fight for the working class. And I do think one thing that I spoke about it a lot on the campaign trail, right? That I was running for Congress, but you fight fascism at the city, county, and state level. It's like so important right now that you can go in and defeat somebody like Gregory Mattingley, who, even if he is socially liberal, might feel more emboldened, and can actually implement some great policies. So what are some? And I know especially Decatur Planned Parenthood closed, right?
It did,
And
unfortunately.
then, you guys have had issues with hospital closures and other issues. So I know one of the top things that you wanted to focus on was access to healthcare, access to mental health care. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I've really come to learn over the last even just like 6 months is how much our health department here in town is struggling. Our health department is not even primarily funded by the taxpayers, it's actually primarily funded by grants. That being
Oh, wow.
said, it's actually wildly underfunded. If you even bothered to pull up like the Macon County website and look at the jobs that they have posted for our health department, they have jobs for nurses listed at $35,000 a year. And it's a wonderful place to work. Like, it's no diss to anyone who is working there. I've had interactions with them. My
Yeah.
partner has, worked with the health department before. He's currently on leave on military duty, but he's worked at the health department, and we've had wonderful interactions. That being said, you're not gonna be able to keep a nurse or another employee paying them that wage. It's just not
Mm,
livable. And so the turnover is really high, which leaves, residents with lapse of services and things like this. And we know that, like, we can do better. We know that our county deserves better, and we have a really wonderful blueprint that's been laid for us by, like, Champaign County, by, Bloomington, like, all of these places around us that have expanded the services of their health department and seen really wonderful results for their residents.
mhm.
We know that's possible, but we're not doing it. And so that's been something I
Yeah.
really wanted to rally behind of, like, doing better for our citizens. We know that we need help, and that's something we can do.
No, I think it's really difficult to see when I moved to Champaign in 2013. One of my friends worked at Carle Hospital, and to hear the wages that they paid nurses at the time, uh, it's horrible. I mean, I say bankers should not be the ones making the big bucks. That should be teachers, nurses, doctors, the people that are actually doing the work to improve our society and take care of each other. So I mean, whatever you can do to do that. I mean, I think at the federal level, ideally, we can get a lot of those jobs to be federally funded jobs that we make sure they have great benefits. That's something I felt in the military is why doesn't everyone have 30 days paid annual leave? Um,
Absolutely.
and so we got to get there. What are some of the other issues that you're really focused on?
Um,
Kind of where you differ from Greg.
Yeah, so I think one of the things is as I mentioned, he was a defense attorney for a long time. He worked as like a public defender. He worked in the public defender's office for quite a long time. And so he has actually kind of taken over the committee for justice,
Mhm.
meaning that he's kind of in charge of like the committee that works with the circuit clerk, like all of the judges, the county sheriff, things like that. And I've done my research, I've put in the time, I've read over these board meetings, like I've read their minutes, I've read these discussions, and over and over, I just see the humanity of people be tossed out the window. There's been a lot of talk around, the no cash bail policy, things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and I can understand having concerns as far as like everyone wants to make sure we're safe, and I'm a full and complete supporter of that. And I think it's very reasonable to hold everyone accountable and make sure we're actually adhering to the letter of what is written. That being said, when these conversations are being had, instead of saying, "Hey, are we making sure everyone's safe? Are we following the letter of these things?" Instead, Greg Mattingly, the county sheriff, Jim Root brought up they were only concerned about how it would affect their revenue. That was their issue, not concerns about the humanity of these people. I understand,
Yeah.
obviously we want to keep dangerous people off the streets. We want to make sure everyone is safe. I'm in full support and agreement with that. But also, these are still human beings. And a lot of these are petty crimes that are reduced to just like, hey, I was trying to survive. Um,
Yeah.
and you shouldn't be more concerned with your revenue than someone's life.
No, I mean, right now, I mean, unfortunately, like, we've seen a lot of cities, especially with, progressive leftist mayors that crime is going down, but unfortunately, everyone's economic welfare is horrible right now. And so you're going to inevitably see an increase in crime because people's basic needs are not being met. And that is the way that we reduce crime, is making sure that people's basic needs are met. I do think this is something I was going to say earlier. You're running for County Board District 5, but you're not really just representing them. You're going to be fighting for the whole county. And so I do think those conversations that you have will be so important because even if I've told people, even if you don't win the election, you're changing people's minds. You're moving us in a better direction, one where we will not accept this same way anymore, whether it's under a Democrat or a Republican. That we do need change.
Absolutely. There has to be change. One thing I've said over and over again is like, listen, even if we don't agree on everything,
Mm,
I can tell you this. I will show up to the meetings, which is more than my opponent is doing. His job is to represent the people. His job is to vote on these policies and to show up for his constituents. And he's not
mm.
even doing that. His attendance record this year, he's attended 2 out of the 6 meetings this year. That is abysmal. Like, that's awful. Last year, his attendance record was 51%. Out of the 13 meetings held, he attended 7. So, this is a
Yeah.
long-standing issue, and at bare minimum, even if you don't agree with me on everything, I can tell you I'm gonna show up to the meeting. I'm gonna make sure you have representation because you deserve that.
No, I think that's great. I was going to ask, what do most Republicans say when you do knock on their doors or talk to them at local meetings?
Honestly, I've had really good reception. Like, there's gonna be a negative comment here or there
Mhm.
online. I can't even tell if, some of these people are in my district. The internet is
But
a
yeah.
wide place, so it could be
Uh-huh.
anyone from anywhere. But, when I'm actually talking to people in person, when I'm knocking doors, I've had people say like, "Oh, well, I'm traditionally conservative." And I always meet them with, "That's okay. We can still have a conversation if you're open to
Mhm.
it." And,
Yeah.
those people were the people who still signed my petition to get on the ballot, despite
Mhm.
opening the door and saying, like, "Oh, we don't agree on stuff." Me being able to just talk with them ended with them, signing my petition to get on the ballot. When I was knocking doors, I only had one person who actually turned me away and told me to get off their lawn. And that was only because they asked, "Who are you running with?" And I said, "I'm running as a Democrat." And they were like, "Get out." Other than that, I've had, really positive
Yeah.
reception. I've really gotten good feedback from the community, really great support, and I think this is a winnable race. I really do.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think something that I learned, and I think even our campaign could have been a little bit better about it in certain ways, but people like Zoran, people like Dr. Abdul Al Sayed in Michigan, like, they have great message discipline where they're able to, what Zoran stood for, whether it was fast free buses, universal childcare, things like that. Dr. Abdul Al Sayed always goes with Medicare for all, money out of politics, money in people's wallets. I do think, like, especially if you're able to get some more fundraising, maybe that's something that you can win them over with a couple key phrases on yard signs
Yeah,
or a billboard, something like that.
definitely.
Um, so it is Juneteenth. Um, and I know that's definitely something that I wanted to touch on today too. Um, we live in an America that still has a very bad systemic racism problem, and we've had it for 250 years. Just last week, there was a burning cross in Grant Park in Chicago, and even though we're a blue state, that doesn't mean that we don't have tons of racism in Illinois. Even in the city of Urbana, which where I live, which is progressive, we have historically had tons of redlining and just, systemic racism over the years. Are you able to talk a little bit about, what that looks like in Decatur?
I've definitely seen my fair share of racism in Decatur. I wish I could say that, we're like this wonderfully, extremely progressive community and that would never happen here, but that would be a
Mhm.
lie. Racism is definitely alive and well here, and that is disappointing to say. We have about 20% of our population in Decatur and Macon County is people of color. And despite that, I see over and over our public officials, like the mayor, try to blame violent crime on our Black community, try and blame it on parents just not
Yeah,
showing up to take care of their kids, ignoring the fact that this is policy failure that's brought us to this point. It's systemic poverty. It's things like predatory companies coming into our area and creating, where we are actually now an environmental justice community, and they're trying to make it worse actively, which is just going to
mm,
create even further poverty, which is going to increase the crime rate. Like, there's so many
yeah,
things like that, that are an active problem. There are things like our county, not even just our county, like court system, but it furthers that, like, modern day enslavement arrangement, and it is a
yeah,
problem. It's a problem that needs to be addressed, and it's something that, I've kind of seen my opponent kind of push off and say, like, "Well, that's a national issue, that's not a here issue, that doesn't have anything to do with county board," and I think even if I can't vote to take racism away necessarily. It's still very much an
yeah,
issue I'm concerned with and I think is very relevant because it affects every part of policy at every level of government. That is something that needs to be considered when you're looking at a policy. And if you're not doing that, you are failing your constituents.
yeah. No, I do think, it's one of those things that, we look at the genocide in Gaza and everything that's going on there, the wars that we've been in throughout the years, that we had no business starting in the first place, really since World War II. But that colonialism, that imperialism, we've done that to our Black communities for
Yeah.
our entire existence, and, I do think there are ways, even in Decatur, that we can fight back against it. Champaign-Urbana stood up a reparations committee. They've had kind of a steering committee for the last couple of years, but they made an official committee, I think, in February. Evanston was able to pass reparations in 2021. Do you think there's energy for starting some type of reparations commission in Decatur, knowing that it'll probably take a while to have those conversations?
I think that it's something worth pursuing, even if
Mhm.
it's not, like, immediately effective, even if it's not the action that we wanna see immediately happen. Sometimes the wheels turn slowly. I think it's something worth
Yeah,
pursuing. I think there are really positive, wonderful, like, organizations that are Black owned and run here in Decatur that want things like this. And, people who look like me need to be active allies to that and stand up and fight for that, and stand behind the people fighting for that. There is progress happening.
mhm,
We have some like active Juneteenth celebrations today and tomorrow. And
yeah,
it's huge. That hasn't been something that's
mhm,
always happened in our community. So I'm excited to see those things progressing. I was really privileged and so happy to be able to attend the Black History Gala back in February, I want to say. And that was an incredible event. And I was very lucky to attend and left just feeling so inspired by the people in our community who have shown up, like these residents who have been historically abused by our nation, and even by our own city, as
yeah,
recently as our mayor blaming crime on them solely, pretty much. And despite all of that, showed up and gave us excellence anyways. And I think that's a good reminder to allies who have been in the
yeah.
fight a lot less than they have, that we have a duty to show up and to be on the forefront right now and let them take a break. Let them get some rest, and we can fight for a while.
Yeah, I think one thing that I heard early on, was when all the white people were saying, "Oh my gosh, like this fascism is crazy," and black leaders in our community would go, "Fascism's been here the whole time. You're just experiencing it now."
Yeah, it's just
Um,
affecting you now.
yeah, and that there's so much truth to that, right? And so I do think whatever we can to, and this is where I think we're slowly pushing our country in a better direction, because things like teach-ins to maybe talk about somebody like Martin Luther King Jr. and everything that he's done, or other, there's ways too that maybe you guys could eventually open up grants to really help black owned businesses in your community actually get access to those grants, because I do think Evanston Evanston's reparations program is not enough. What they essentially did is there were a lot of black residents who between 1919 and 1969, they were specifically harmed with housing discrimination. Their descendants can now access $25,000 towards whether it's a house, whether it's property taxes, something like that. Um, but it's not enough, right? Like there's so many things, even as far as being able to support local businesses in general too, because I mean there's just so many mega corporations that are extorting us, and that's the real problem.
Truly. It's definitely a major problem here in Decatur, especially. Like I mentioned, we're an environmental justice community, and
Mhm.
it's only gonna get worse if our, like, political leaders don't stand up.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, our current city council is failing us on a lot of levels, and I would like to see, maybe even if the county board can't necessarily take official action in some ways, they still need to be loud and vocal.
mhm,
This is still community leaders. These are still political leaders. They have a duty to their constituents, even if, we can't maybe necessarily write a resolution banning certain things from happening.
yeah,
We can still take action. We can still be loud. We can still use our voices. And they have just fallen silent on these issues and said, well, we can't do anything.
yeah.
And I think that's unacceptable, personally.
Is there mainly how many Republicans are in office there versus Democrats?
It Our current board, I believe, has only 3 Democrats on it. I believe
Okay.
there is. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I want to say there's like 7 Republicans. I know we recently had a county board member who
Mhm.
passed away, so I'm not sure where that falls on that split.
Yeah.
Um, but I do know that at least in my area. So in this district, I'm the first Democrat to run in 20 years. It's
Oh
definitely
wow.
not a historically Democratic district,
Mhm.
and I know that, and I knew that when I took on this campaign. I know this wasn't something that was going to be an easy win. I knew it was going to be an uphill battle, but I still believe it's worth doing, even if things don't end up going the way that we want.
Yeah.
Think it's worth fighting for people. I think it's worth trying to push our current representative to do better.
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, so I was gonna say, um, I just want you to promise me that no matter what happens, that you'll run again for something.
I definitely am not going anywhere on that front. I will be here. I will be loud. One thing about me, I've never known how to shut up. So I'm gonna keep saying things. I'm gonna keep bothering our politicians. I'm gonna keep showing up in some form or fashion to hold them accountable, because
Yeah.
you don't get to show up to a meeting and ask questions and say, like, well, I'm concerned about this, that, and the other. I think this could be a major problem, and then turn around and vote to support that. Like, you don't
Yeah.
get to do that. That's not how this works.
No, and I do think, in our red areas especially, we have to win the narrative and win with progressive politicians or leftist politicians wherever we can. Because I do worry a state like Illinois, the the blue party is very moderate, very centrist, and they have so much money between AI, crypto, Meta, DraftKings, APAC, J Street, that it's going to be hard for them to lose a foothold in those blue areas. But I do think like this is where if you show that you can defeat a Republican with your policies and and that you can win that narrative, it's even the small things, right? Like the resolution to honor Charlie Kirk or to condemn trans people or something, like, those things, we need to start even winning those things too, right? Because it's like, no, I don't care about trans people. I care about putting more money in your pocket. I care about the fact that billionaires and a trillionaire own so much more than we could ever imagine, and the rest of us are just struggling to get by. And also, I will stand up for human rights because that's what I care, because
Yeah.
I am not weak like you. But I do think like that's how we get through this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen there is good support in our community. I think
Yeah.
we need more of it. We need people to be louder. We need people to be more active. We need people to show up and be involved. And I have seen some of that coming about. Like, there's definitely been active and loud pushback to some of the projects they're trying to push in Macon County right now. I recently went to a Illinois EPA meeting about a Macon County issue, and there was a lot of people showing up to say, "We don't want this here. We don't want an AI data center. We don't want you putting, CO2 underneath our only water source. We're not
Yeah.
interested in that." And I was happy to see that turn out. Like, we haven't always gotten that. So to have that like progress was a big deal. It definitely, matters to me to see that. So I want to see more of that active energy, and I hope we can continue that momentum. It matters.
Yeah. No, exactly. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time today. I know you're a busy person. What do you have going on for the rest of June? And where can we find you?
Yes. So, for the rest of June, I am, also I'm a student as well as a full-time worker and mom. So I stay pretty busy between school and work and all the things. It definitely keeps me running. Um, I was telling you before, I've got classes with lots of essays doing them, but it does not take away from my dedication to this. So I will also be out supporting our Black-owned businesses today, in support of Juneteenth, as well as attending like some Juneteenth celebrations. We have a parade here in Macon County tomorrow
Oh,
at noon downtown, and you can definitely catch me there. But also, I have a website, which is caseyformaconcounty.com. And that is the same name on all of my social media. So I've got Instagram, Facebook, Threads, all of those things. So you can catch me on there as well anytime.
Kasey.
Yes.
For people who can't
Thank
spell.
you.
There's yeah. And if people were to chip in and donate, I assume they can just click the donate button on your website.
Yes, you can also find me on Act Blue. That's who we do our donations through. So,
Perfect. And Casey's running for county board. She's not made of money, or they're a working class candidate, and so that is where 5, 10, $15 can go a long way towards helping them buy yard signs, stickers, lid for knocking doors, things like that. It all helps. So please, join me in supporting Kasey Holt for Macon County Board. Kasey, thank you so much for being on today.
thank you for your time and having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, let's do this again before the election.
Absolutely.
Thanks everyone for joining today, and I'll see you soon.